Thank you very much for having me. And I know Andrew is on the call from NYSAIS as well. Final Sight is very grateful for our partnership with NYSAIS. I think it goes over, a decade or so in working together on the NYSAIS website. But we're excited to be part of the NYSAIS-Now. I know John Moser had done a session prior with you, and I'm excited to talk about digital engagement today from a school leader standpoint. So as George said, if you have any questions specifically about your institution or your current situation, let's definitely try to talk about this. George and I had a little brainstorming session yesterday about sending out the Google slide deck beforehand, so maybe you can take a look at it and kind of agree, disagree with me on my top 10 priority. But the goal here, and I've spoken to heads of schools in many different states, is really usually a head of school or a school leader. The eye on the ball is not on website, it's not on social media, it's not on data, it's not on different things. It's kind of that 30,000 foot level. So this presentation is really to kind of work with your team on, are we doing everything that we can in a digital environment to connect up with our audience, to align with our school goals? And I think that's, one of the takeaways is, doing anything offline or online should align up with mission, spirit, essence, and it should align eventually towards a goal. So I'm excited to chat today, and again, thank you for NYSAIS's partnership. And I think there's a good number of Final Sight clients on the roster, so we're very thankful for your partnership as well. Let me try to switch off here into presentation mode. With Google Slides, it turns off the video for me. So George, if there is a timely comment on there of talking about a specific slide, please feel free to interject, or anyone else. But I'd love to kind of dive right in here and kind of just go through the deck, and each of these could have some talking points, so feel free to interact here. It's not just, I believe the NYSAIS-Now format is not just sit back and listen. We really do encourage participation and dialogue through this. Where I'll go with this is really from my experience as a student worker at UConn in technology, in athletics. Me and my buddy built out the first web platform for UConnHuskies.com. I was given a shot by an athletic director, and it really kind of shaped where I am in my professional career. So after athletics, I actually went on to develop the first online community for UConn alumni, doing a lot of electronic, a lot of print, a lot of outreach, a lot of engagement efforts through traditional kind of chapters and clubs, and through the new medium, whether that be, again, communities, email broadcasts, websites, just different ways to leverage the newer technologies in building and fostering better connections with our alums, our fans, and our community as a whole. When we started Final Sight, it was a nice kind of leap of faith in a very opportunistic time period. I think, John and I and our team are very lucky to kind of hit the ground running at the right time and be innovative partners with independent schools. So, that came prior to having kids or kind of being on the consumer side of a private education. So it really does allow a full circle experience. I'm a recovering board member at two private schools, one at elementary school and one at a high school. And like I said, now, a parent of four. I've got to update the slide deck. I've got a sophomore, a freshman, a sixth grader, and a kindergartner. So a lot of this in terms of value proposition, in terms of, parent engagement, is kind of right in my wheelhouse now of getting valuable information on my mobile device, getting information about where leadership is driving us and different priorities, and maybe even getting a little sneak peek into the learning environment through digital platforms today. So I think a lot of our schools are exploring in some way, shape, or form how to provide better value and tools to parents for recruitment and retention and cultivation for alumni, but also preparing our kids for, the world that they're going to be living in. So, a lot of things like the flipped classroom or social media literacies or digital citizenship, really comes into play as we're school leaders in today's day and age. I'm also on Twitter. I'm a pretty avid tweeter, and I'm highly active on LinkedIn. So if any of you guys want to, follow on Twitter, a lot of our clients kind of follow me, and a lot of my connections on LinkedIn are our clients. And it's just another avenue for me to share best practices or just interesting ed tech stories to the audience as a whole. And I really utilize these in a personal learning network, just like we are, 17 people in this Zoom meeting right now. So I'm always learning from my, personal learning network, and I'm always trying to add value back to it as well. So if you're on LinkedIn or Twitter and you use those platforms, let's definitely connect up after this. One thing to get into digital engagement, and George, help me out as I play this video and let me know if the sound quality is good. Is really that big picture from a school leadership. I've been following an author, a best-selling author called Eric Qualman for about a decade now. He's written books on socialnomics, on just the opportunity that we're in the digital landscape, and really leveraging the digital landscape for Fortune 500 companies, for organizations as a whole, and leading on the trends of consumerism, of where the consumers are in each of these spaces. So this socialnomics video is really something that you guys might want to show your leadership, just to understand the fast-paced world that we live in terms of trying to get any sort of engagement on an email open or a follow on Facebook, or someone sharing different information via an alumni blog. But I do think this is really kind of a nice way to share where we are as a society as a whole. And George, let me know if the volume is coming through.
So we're not seeing the video, we are hearing the volume.
Okay. Let me see here.
If you mouse over the bottom, there should be a button for share screen. It should be green.
On the Zoom? Yeah.
Yep.
I was sharing that slide. So you did get the other slide deck though, right?
Correct, but you just stopped sharing, so you just need to click share screen again.
Okay.
There you go.
But this won't play unless it's in full screen mode. Are you seeing that player or no?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, let's try this once more. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. I just think that's a great video to really open the eyes of your leadership on where we are today in the world. And I think that last kind of annotation there is word of mouth. That's really, when I talk to a lot of admissions directors, a lot of heads of schools, a lot of a lot of people in enrollment management, legacy families and word of mouth is really key. So getting into, expanding or scaling that word of mouth is so valuable in the digital space. It's so very hard to do, but it's so valuable. So the more authentic storytelling that we can do, the more, making connections via these social channels like LinkedIn with, some of your students now being on LinkedIn because they lowered the age limit of LinkedIn to 13 years old to connect up with, some of your 60-year-olds on LinkedIn, and doing some mentoring or reverse mentoring or adding value in different areas. They're so key in leveraging the value experience of each of your schools, but also expanding the network of your school as well. So again, I just, leaning back on that, Eric Coleman is someone that I've followed. He's got another book out that I think some of your leadership should look at. It's What Happens on Campus Stays on YouTube. And a lot of that is kind of, getting into something that's different from the topics here in engagement, but it's more into digital citizenship, digital footprints and digital shadows and the world that our kids are growing up in. And I think it's probably another, another NYSAIS-Now seminar on just that whole kind of component. But I do think as a parent of four, that's something that's really concerning to me is, each of my kids and how they're using social media themselves, but how I'm using social media, because my 5-year-old already has a digital shadow on Facebook and Instagram because I've been posting for 5 years, pictures. So I won't go down that rabbit hole, but I do think it is, pretty important for us to think about engagement in terms of forwarding our mission, driving sustainable revenue, showcasing value and getting better engagement. But I think we're all here for the kids. So the more that we can be in tune with the pros and cons of all of these channels, the better, and the more we can educate, the better. So getting into the slide deck, and I'm going to keep the slide off full screen just because it's easier for me to look at the other attendees in the Zoom. But I think we need to educate you guys, and I'm not the expert on this, but I just kind of live and breathe in this space on current digital trends. The bigger, takeaway is I want to facilitate the conversation with school leaders. You know, so we'll be at NYSAIS or the Tri-Heads conference, and again, trying to talk to people about digital engagement and rules of engagement. And I have done this in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts and whatnot. So trying to keep this conversation going, because there's no finish line. It's a journey, and a journey of us learning and us sharing our expertise among our peers too. I want to grow the digital network of school leaders as well. And like George said in the email, or I asked him to send in the email, I want you guys in the audience, you know, we're less than 20, come up with some good questions where you can actually take one thing away and get your team to start working on it and execute it. So that could be one of these top 10s. So the goal is engagement. And again, we're in a very busy economy. We're in a handheld economy. How do you crack through that? I think, you know, some of the strategies are very important, but we also need to know, if I don't have your engagement, whether we're in this seminar, whether we're in the classroom, whether we're at a conference or in a meeting, you know, I'm not going to be able to convert you. So if I'm an admissions director and I'm not engaging, whether it's through the website or whether it's through an on-campus tour, you know, I'm not going to be able to attract you to take that next step to fill out an application, or any other step in the equation. So I think without engagement, we can't attract, we can't recruit, we can't retain, we can't cultivate or steward, and most importantly, you can't educate. So how do we get through to the engagement? And this little slide here, or this infographic over here, is basically the internet in a minute. So there's a lot of competition out there, and you might think that your competition is other New York independent schools, but it's not. Your competition is Netflix. Your competition is Instagram. For most of your kids, your competition is Snapchat. So how do you actually break through and carve out a slice of this pie in the internet minute? And that's kind of where we try to look for in different ways. The recipe that I have kind of for success is you really look at, in order to be engaging for web content, for emails, for news stories, for magazine articles, for anything, you really need to come up with some awesome content, right? Because if you're writing just so-so content and you're bored writing it, no one's going to read it. So really focus on awesome content no matter which medium you are. The second is know your audience. So as personal as you can get with data. If it's a targeted email to a young alumni audience, know your audience, know their trigger points, and try to add as much personal touch as possible. And you can do that very easily with a lot of tools out there today. And then lastly is you don't want to just spam your users with stories that are self-serving or selfish. So if you do have a drip campaign for, you know, increasing donorship, or if you do have some drip campaigns for driving families from an initial inquiry to an open house, make sure that you're adding value along each step. And I think a good recipe is you know, a quote stolen from Gary Vaynerchuk out of his book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. It's a great social media book on engagement. But basically, you don't go into a heavyweight fight just throwing right hooks, because you're going to miss and you're going to get hit with a jab, or you're going to get hit and knock you off balance. But if you go in with a strategy and jab, 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 right hook is really add value, add value, add value. And in those first three interactions, you're building trust. You know, it's very hard to build trust when you're in a face-to-face environment. It's even harder to build trust in email campaigns and digital communication. So know out of the gate that you need to build trust before you make an ask. And the simplest environment or example of that is maybe a gift to the annual fund, or a chance to volunteer at homecoming, or a bigger part in a capital campaign. So the recipe, again, kind of just going back, is be awesome with content. And that could be text, video, pictures, imagery, and messaging. get personal to the audience, because a one-size-fits-all message is not as clickable or openable as you would think it would be in 2017. And add value in each of these, so every touch kind of matters to that end goal. Let's dive right in here now in some different ways that we can get or address better digital engagement. The first trend is a mobile or a responsive designed website. So I'm not sure, if anyone knows responsive technology, but basically it's a website where basically you can go in and you're going to get the same experience here as you're getting in on your desktop. It came to age in 2014, kind of mainstream. It is mainstream now. So if your institution's website does not have a responsive site, you're ignoring half of your audience. That's a very important trend. Google is now penalizing websites that are not mobile responsive. If you do not know, all you need to do is Google mobile-friendly tools, and Google has a web presence where you can actually pop in your URL, and it will take it through a test and say it is compliant or it's not compliant because of these areas, or it is semi-compliant, and these are some areas where you should address. But I think, again, if you're not mobile first or thinking mobile first, that's an area where right now you can go back to your director of communications or your head of school or your board and saying, we are in the value business. If someone comes to our website from their mobile device, and a lot are Googling you through their mobile devices, and they get a very bad experience, they're probably going to write you off in the value department. So this is a responsive site where you see it on an iMac, a MacBook, a tablet, and an iPhone. Again, I would recommend going back and checking that out. The next trend is about 5 years ago, a lot of school sites were putting just TMI on their websites. They had just too much information, too much navigation. It was very political of people trying to get on the homepage and getting their real estate, and it was a big battle. We've seen over the last 5 years a trend saying we're dropping off from information overload on the homepage to realizing that we need to inspire people with the site, and we need to make sure the on-campus experience is truly delivered in the online world. If you guys have done any purchasing before, buying a car, buying a camera, doing anything, one, you're going to review sites, and two, you're going to the actual product environment. Obviously a 20,000 plus independent school tuition is something very emotional, and it's not just an off the cuff of buying, a camera. But we need to really bring mission, spirit, essence to life to the web. We've seen more trends of home pages replacing view books. You might have a shelf life of a view book for 2, 3, 4 years. But again, that view book should, in today's day and age, have timeless material. And it should have a shelf life for that long, where you're not sitting with 5,000 view books that are out of date because our head of school left, or different things change with your branding in different areas. So more and more, the homepage is getting inspirational. It is becoming really the storytelling vehicle for your admissions process. And it usually culminates in a scrolling environment instead of 3, 4, 5 years ago being more of a click-through environment, where the homepage is a continuum. And that homepage is really a story telling it through all the differentiators in your unique value proposition, but it culminates in a call to action. So you'll usually see inquire today, apply, give on the bottom or somewhere prominent in areas of homepages today, because that's the #1 driver of conversions to that next step in the admissions funnel. Mobile,
Rob,
social.
Rob, I want to interrupt you just for a second, Rob, because we have a question from Long Island Lutheran for you.
Sure.
Want to go right ahead and unmute your mic and
Okay, great. Here we go. I had a question because I know they were talking about the use of view books, and obviously you want to have as long a shelf life as possible. How do you then address parents? Because sometimes we'll use photography that's stock photos that's sort of pretty recent, but parents will say, oh, that person graduated last year. So
Yeah.
how quickly do you have to update everything? I mean, obviously the content can be fresh, but how fresh do you need to be on, you know, the attendees?
Yeah, I think you need to realize that those people might be in a smaller subset. They're probably parents of multiple kids.
Okay.
I think you can have a real world discussion with them saying, you know, at the shelf life of this print, we get a discount for printing X number. And our vision is we're going to print this many and we go through this many a year. So I've seen more schools go on a more year-to-year basis of their view books because of, you know, they're going to just update different things. And there's different software packages, I think, for InDesign in different ways where you can flip out those pictures pretty easily.
Okay.
But if I'm buying in bulk, you know, I'm buying, you know, 5,000 view books, I want something that's going to last, that drives more people to an interactive website that is actually a better storyteller, because you can't get video in a view book. You can't get, you know, that emotion as easily as you can on the digital environment.
Okay, so probably video too would be about a year.
What's that?
Video as well would be about a year.
Yeah, I think video could be about a year. You know, the website with a lot of tools, you know, some schools have the same photos up there for 2-3 years. So it's really dependent on yourself. And we talk to a lot of webmasters who are like, I hate my site. You know, it's so boring. It's the same old stuff, but they're looking at it every day. And if it's doing its job, and again, I think the homepage in 2017, that's your admissions assistant. You know, it really is a driver 24/7 of storytelling, of value proposition, of driving people to your inquiry or your application page or your tuition page. It's helping you, or it's helping the parents figure out if they're a good fit or not.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Great question. And again, you know, traditionally, we've been in this market almost 2 decades. You know, we've had schools that had 100-page view books, and they were spending 6 figures on their view books. And now a lot of them are trimming it down to maybe 12 pages and driving to more interactive content. But I do think, you know, the spends are going more and more away from the traditional to the newer medium, whether it's website, whether it's SEO, whether it's social media ads, where one, you can track the engagement a lot better with analytics, and you can see what's working and what's not. Whereas the other was almost a sunken cost or a gut feel of, hey, we just need a view book because, you know, the 3 schools that we're competing with, their view books are awesome. So I think it's really more a conversation too of finding your best marketing mix from, you know, the print to YouTube to social media to what we feel is the central hub of your communications, you know, your website. Great question, though. A great site that I really love is the Baylor School. So this is a school in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They have a great campus, you know, on the I believe it's the Chattanooga River. They're basically, their applicant pool is the world. So when they go to their website, you see awesome video, you see how Baylor leads, you see how Baylor, you know, prepares, you see how Baylor welcomes, you see how Baylor wins. It really is a very inspiring story. So after this is done, you know, check out BaylorSchool.org. And there's a lot of other schools doing a great job, but this website, the hierarchy and the design is about 3 years old. So that's what impresses me even more is the staying power and the sustainability, because they are changing videos. They are changing call to actions in their nav. They're changing their news stories, and they have some really nice infographics in there. but it's all ownership owned at Baylor for them to manage and manipulate as needed. So the next one here is getting down into personalization and content strategy. So I think just like every interaction on campus is value and it's taken at a personal nature, we need to really look at this for, you know, from the digital standpoint. And it goes back to kind of my top three is awesome, personal, and value. You know, we need to look at our data and personalize the messaging as much as possible. We need to leverage individuals. And I stated at the start of this Zoom, you know, as a sophomore in college, the AD basically gave me the keys to the castle and my buddy to build a really neat, you know, website for a regional, you know, athletic program. That was a very big risk at the time. You know, you have a lot of authentic storytellers within your school, whether it's upper school students, whether it's parents, whether it's alums. You know, harness the power of authenticity, because what you're going to capture there is magic. Whether that's through video testimonials, whether that's through inviting them to blog, whether that's connecting up, you know, mentor relationships, you know, that authentic storytelling, you really can't, you know, you can't replicate if you're, you know, making up or coming up with different marketing campaigns. And getting the right message to the right audience at the right time, you know, that's more of the inbound marketing kind of mindset. So if you do have great blogging in different categories, or if you do have great social media posts or great videos, you know, people are going to search for those different areas, and they're going to find that content at their stage in the journey. So that might be a catalyst for them to give, you know, and they haven't stepped foot on campus in 20 years. So understanding, you know, your messaging and where to put that content, and where to place it out on social media, where to promote ads or boost ads, and where to actually push, you know, email communications out as well. One size spamming your database does not work anymore. I'm going to skip over this video, but for those of you who have the Google slide deck, I would recommend going back to this. This is a YouTube clip in the early days of you know, YouTube marketing in 2009. I still think it's one of the most authentic, awesome value stories around. It's called Dartmouth Has a Wacky Business Model. So it basically goes through the story of value add. And when I speak in person, I play this video and I then say, find, you know, your Knox School experience, find your Long Island Lutheran experience, because that really, taking this video, it helps enhance the value proposition for the existence of your institution. So as we look at the Dartmouth video, you don't know if it's an admissions video or if it's a cultivation video or a donor development video. It really encompasses the Dartmouth ethos. And for me to share this, being a UConn guy, you know, that means a lot. It means it's pretty cool. So I think, you know, we're all building content that we think is awesome. And if it is good, it's going to be read by our inside community. If it's great, it's going to be read by the outer circle. It's going to be shared on Facebook. It's going to be shared on LinkedIn or Twitter. And it's going to have some staying power if we're really getting to the message in a thoughtful, fun, you know, new media way in 2017. So that video kind of leads us into social strategy, because again, they were early adopters, 2009, doing YouTube clips that were talking about value and giving and recruitment. The social strategy, we're in a very opportunistic time frame. Some call it the Wild West with social media, with rules of engagement and different things, but it's really easy for us to get the word out in a very quick way. And social, I think, has a great avenue for us to scale. So taking those video testimonials, taking those authentic stories, publishing them on, Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Instagram will actually help you get more reach. There is a caution to this. And I always tell schools, don't, dive into the pool if you don't know how to swim. So social is getting back to that doing it awesome. I would say do Facebook awesome, because Facebook has the biggest user base. It's going to have your biggest reach. It's going to help you target, parents and alums. You might not be able to target students so much there, but do one channel awesome and then move to the next. Don't try to do all of them at once. It's just too consuming. I would think about staffing a social media or a new media position within your school. It's getting that prominent. We had Hawaii Prep Academy, it's a boarding school in Hawaii, present at Final Site U this year. They have data that tracks 5 full-pay students back to their authentic storytelling posting on Instagram. Think about that. They have students posting awesome stuff about HPA experiences. They have a circle of people following them. They then kind of share it or comment on it. But they've tracked back 5 kids that actually paid tuition that found out about HPA first through Instagram. Just food for thought. Other schools doing really neat stuff on social media. Choate, Rosemary Hall here in Connecticut does a really nice job. They actually have social media feeds pulling right on their homepage. So they do have different blocks of great content and defining the Choate experience, but then they're tying in the social media feeds here for a day in the life. So these feeds are moderated feeds where they can approve what goes up and what doesn't go up from Facebook, from Twitter, from Instagram, but they're integrating that into the web platform. It really just does add another day in the life or showcases a day in the life of the experience. Getting into data. I'm just checking on time here. I think we're good on time so far. A lot of our schools have either 2 systems that hold data, or some have up to 20 systems. So you can't get personal if you don't know which system is holding the master record, and you don't know where is your go-to database when you need to email out your young alums, or you need to do a phone-a-thon, or which system are we going to add LinkedIn profiles? Or are we even asking people for their social handles? So data systems, one is understanding which systems hold the data. And if you're in the director of communications seat, you need to be able to access that data on demand so you can leverage personal campaigns to different people to help drive attendance at reunion, or volunteerism from your parent body, or a young alumni annual giving campaign. So I think now more than ever, people are analyzing and looking at their student information system, their donor management system, their admission system. They might all be under one vendor. They might be in 3 separate vendors. They might be in 5 separate vendors. But making sure that you know where the data is, you can get access to the data in a timely manner. You leave or kind of understand why a system wouldn't talk to another system. So if they can't get the data out from a student database to, say, a Constant Contact or in Final Sight's platform, email newsletters, e-notify, if you can't get that data out easily from your system to a communication tool, you need to understand why, and you need to maybe help find a way to bridge the gap. And you need to look for kind of the best solution that's going to align data, communications, and that's going to drive kind of the best engagement. So what we've seen here and this is just a little bit on philosophy of final site, is there's probably 10 top tier data vendors. We've said, all right, let's work with all of them, get an API out. We can actually on an hourly feed get alumni data, parent data, student data, faculty data into our systems, where you can do personalized portals, you can do personalized email campaigns, and there's not a bottleneck of data from one system that can't get to another. A lot of schools are talking about data and web connectivity to drive engagement from a lot of different departments, from admissions, academics, athletics, and advancement.
Quick question for you.
Any questions so far? Yeah, go ahead, George.
I got a quick question from one of our participants about the the Hawaii story that you told. Was that the Instagram page that generated that interest from the individual users, or was that the school's Instagram page?
Sure, it was a combination. So the school allows for kids to take over the Instagram for HPA, but they also have kids posting on Instagram with different hashtags and tagging. So it was a combination of the two, but I can say, and I'm not the expert on this, I can definitely point people to HPA, that it was really the circle of students that were the influencers of the stories that led to people inquiring and kind of going through that process. So that's where that's a great example of word of mouth, to world of mouth, because you're using these new platforms and you're driving value, even though these kids didn't know they were being followed on Instagram, because most of these kids are not having these protected Instagram accounts. We're in the like economy, so they're trying to get as many likes as possible. But that's just a way for them to scale organic content, organic stories, videos on Instagram or pictures from Instagram. But I can share the slide deck too that really gets into it. I'll talk to HPA to see if I can actually share the slide deck or at least put contact information to connect up people who want to talk about it. But I thought that was a phenomenal story of using these tools to drive goals. You're actually filling a seat that started from a first touch on Instagram. I thought that was pretty special.
Thank you.
Any others in the queue?
Nope.
All right, good. So we've got about 15 minutes left, or 10 minutes left. We'll try to get through these last ones. Digital stewardship, I think, again, this gets into cultivation, and a lot of our major gift officers are doing face-to-face. But if you look at different ways of using, this device where you can log into an alumni directory right from your phone, you can schedule your trip to New York City. You can then say, oh, there's 35 constituents in the New York City area that have a giving capacity of $1 million or more. You can then set proper meetings. But you can also drive digital stewardship at the lower level of just getting, a higher percentage of your alumni base to give with different things like Giving Tuesday or your annual Day of Giving campaigns. So there's different ways of you're looking to increase your annual fund, dollar number coming in, or we want to go from 15% of our alums giving this year to 25%. And we want to make it as easy as possible with a mobile giving form, an email campaign, and maybe a great tailored email from one of our biggest donors or from, one of our, best donors from that class or that decade of students to get more of kind of that human involvement. So work on some content, work on data, and show value to the donors, not just, again, kind of, asking them for money. Another video that I won't get into, but it's pretty cool. It's by Bowling Green University. They had a number of 4 donors give over $10 million for their Stroh Center. So this is called the Stroh Center wrap, but it's really at the end of the day, it's a HD thank you video to these donors that really just gave their heart and soul to the university, and then a lot more money to build a great athletic complex. And then they involved student athletes in this, and it was an example of somebody who's Googling it. That's awesome. Participation at home. Definitely watch it after. But this is, again, I think it was a small project where it was thanking these donors. They wanted to get it out to the donor base at Bowling Green. And it was just so awesome. It ended up going viral, and it got on SportsCenter. So some of these branding exercises, if you're doing awesome content, people are going to appreciate that. And again, I say the UConn guy giving props to Bowling Green basketball, especially, is something. Digital stewardship also goes into, finding a destination for your campaign. So a lot of our schools, this is Punahou's capital campaign microsite. So they're doing calls, they're doing face-to-face visits, they're doing email campaigns, and all of this is not going to Punahou's homepage. This is going to a destination that's going to play a video on why they're doing the campaign. It's going to show the stories of all the major givers, and it's going to really be targeted to, I think that's a $300 million campaign that they're working on. So really using this destination to tie in all of their other kind of touch efforts, whether it's face-to-face, phone, the dinner meetings, social media pushes, driving it back to the microsite. Number 7, getting into this SEO and pay-per-click. I can't tell you how important this is if you're in a recruitment attraction school. There's definitely schools that are in enrollment management, and they have wait lists, and they want to find the right kids. If you're in attraction and recruitment mode and people can't find you when they do an unbranded search of, private schools in Poughkeepsie or private schools in Long Island or boarding schools in New York, you don't exist to those people. So I would look at it from, a buyer's perspective and actually Google yourself on either the branded term of Knox school tuition, or the unbranded term, private schools in New York or private schools on Long Island. And where do you come up with that? This is really important if your school needs top of the funnel numbers for your admissions process. You have to understand your competitive landscape too, and that's where getting into metadata and descriptors and differentiators are really key. And you need to keep up with the rules of search engine optimization and pay-per-click. So I think this is really one of the big environments for growth in a lot of our schools. In here, if I'm searching, and this again is the Baylor School, I'm searching an unbranded term, Tennessee private schools. Baylor School comes up number 1 for their website, which is great. They come up number 2 in Wikipedia. They come up in number 3 in boarding school review. So just understanding where you're coming up in the engines is one. And it shows, do I have work to do, which a lot of schools always have work to do to keep that number 1 spot. Or if you're on page 4, you really have work to do because you don't really exist in the digital landscape. So doing a little test on where you come up in organic search with typing in your school name and maybe admissions or tuition, typing in an unbranded search, which is not your school name. It's more, private schools in upstate New York or private schools in Long Island, and figuring out where they go. In advertising, pay-per-click is going to be a lot easier than organic search engine optimization. So pay-per-click is basically you buying an ad from Google and saying New York independent school, and you're going to pay $1 for that click. You're going to see immediate results, and you're going to see where kind of the breakdown comes in the Google environment. SEO is a longer term play. It's more built within the web platform. If you're using Final Site Composer, that's where some of our tools come in to allow you to take ownership of that. But it's a little bit more work. SEO, we have a number of on-demand webinars on finalsite.com too, if this is something that you want to learn more about. User experience. We're almost done with the top 10. We've got about 5 minutes. It's not about you getting bored on your site. It's not about, it's knowing the audience. And if your homepage is doing a great job for admissions purposes, that's where it is. If your parent portal is adding value, that's the user experience that you want. You want to make sure that you educate your current constituents on the user experience and on the best practice of how to navigate through your site, how to follow on Instagram, how to connect up with people on LinkedIn. So educating your leaders is key, because then you need to educate your constituent base. And again, traditionally, directors of communications or directors of marketing are doing some of this, but it takes 4, 5, 10 different touches with different people to get them to adopt to, what you want them to do in a parent portal. So understanding that, what is of value to your audience, and understanding it's going to take you a couple different times, maybe in a video email saying how to use a portal, or how do you subscribe to an iCal feed. What is added value for parents is really key, and then getting them to get the light bulb to turn on of, oh, this web platform or this site is going to make my life easier. And an example of that is, I have my Final Site calendar right here, but I can also pull down, the JV volleyball calendar. I could pull down, the lunch menu. I could pull down, freshman basketball. I could pull down 7 different calendars that make me and my wife's life easier. So iCal feeds is just one example of user experience and why I would want to connect, or why I see a value of that as a paying customer. Getting in here for useful links of logging into, how much money you still owe, or single signing into Google Apps for Education, or single signing into Naviance, or Senior Systems My Backpack. This is an example here in this environment. But adding value in each of the different personas is key to continued engagement. And one time a parent goes to some place that adds value, they're going to share that with their friends. And that's how it's going to get better user adoption, if the user experience is just organically built for them, as easy as possible. I go back to my UConn days here and use athletics as an example, but use all of your different programs. Maybe it's summer programs, maybe it's arts, use your extracurriculars as a front porch to cross-market the values of your school, so it helps your admissions pipeline. So you might have people on campus for games, for camps, for different reasons that do not attend your school. So make sure you use those opportunities online and offline to extract or add value to that audience. And again, I think cross-marketing is key in here. This is Charlotte Country Day. They've got their tweets. They've got their news and schedules and results. But there could be, definitely different call to actions here for signing up for the athletics golf outing, or donate now, or open house, kind of page pops in this experience. So just think about that as for our independent schools, our top 5, usually top 3 visited area of the website is athletics. But if you have another program like arts or drama or summer programs that drives value, make sure that you utilize those as cross-marketing opportunities. And in closing, I think the more that I present to school heads, this really applies, but also school leaders, assistant heads, and lead teachers. the more that you're out there with your personal brand, and I also always say this to heads that are fearful of blogging or, getting on Twitter or getting on different things, is you're really the face to the institution. And as a consumer, I want to know vision, and I want to trust, and I want to know you on a better environment. There's not a better way to get out there than to share a blog once a week or once a month on the great things that happen on campus and what really affected your life to then, inspire your team to do awesome things. So I would, in this environment, lead with your head of school or whoever would be kind of the face of the school or the institution in trying to build their personal brand that then elevates the school or institutional brand. Because people want to follow leaders and they want to see some insight and they want to see value. And I said, dynamic post, because again, you can have them post a weekly or a monthly insight blog. You can then email that out to all of your parents, because if they haven't gone to the blog, they're probably not going to read it. So you can recycle and reuse that dynamic content. Social media, you can be on Twitter. All you need to do is retweet, your school activities, or retweet something on the athletic fields, or retweet some pictures with, the faculty of the month or the student of the month. But going in here, the more personal you can bring your leader to the institutional logo makes the institution human. But I think the more we can leverage that, and again, it really is driven on value and trust. And I'm entrusting one of my 4 kids or all of my 4 kids with you as a leader to enter your school at this point, and in 4 years or in 6 years or in 12 years, they're going through your school experience, your school culture, and the end product is you're going to help them find their best selves. You're in a very valuable time in my seat from a consumer standpoint in shaping the next generation, whether it's my kids or their friends or whatnot. So the more you can bring that to a personal level with a head of school, with yourselves taking it on, I think that would really, make that more real. And I think here, just in the end, I have kept my contact information in here. I actually did this session with a head of school at ISAC, so I'll take Dennis's content out here. I'm happy to field any questions here. I know we're kind of pumping up to 5 o'clock now. And then I'm more than happy to connect on social media and maybe go over any of your institutional kind of issues or pain points or hurdles. Or I think, Jonna and I connected earlier last week to go over Long Island Lutheran, or even just kind of auditing your own kind of web presence or experience. I'm more than happy to have one of our team kind of look at what you're doing and maybe make some recommendations. But I do think, again, top 10, it's not just you going in on this alone on digital engagement. It's getting buy-in from the entire leadership. It's knowing that the web is not a fad. It's not going away. Email marketing, everybody said with social media, email is dead. I still think if you have a great alumni database or a great parent database or a great student database, people are going to read that. It's finding the right mix in digital touches to drive your enrollment goals, to drive your retention goals, to drive your cultivation goals, and to drive your overall engagement goals. And each school has different people. So there's a variable in a lot of things. It's platform, it's people, and it's vision or budget to see where you want to go and how fast you want to go.